Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Jessica Clinton and I'm going to go over the IEP process. First, I'm going to start with the Individuals with Disability Act. This is an act that was created for students with disability. Under the Individual with Disability Act, all ages between the age of 3 and 21 are legally entitled to receive services related to special education. So this means that able to receive any help during their education process. Next, there is FEEPS, or Free Appropriate Public Education. FEEPS is a legal services to all children reside in the states ages between 3 and 21, including those with disability. To break down FEEPS by acronyms, F is for free. Free for parents are not required to pay anything for public education. Next is appropriate. Each child with a disability is entitled to an education. So that means it don't matter if they got a disability or not. Everyone is able to receive an education. Public. Children with disabilities have the same right to attend a public school as a disabled student can. And then education. An education act that guarantees the eligibility children with disabilities will receive a public education that includes special education and related services as directed by the Child Individual Education Program or the IEP based on their needs. And then next, there's a least restricted environment. This is basically where the student is going to be placed, whether they're going to be placed in gen ed or they're going to be placed in the least restricted environment, which means that they may be placed in a classroom that has a smaller group of kids or have more adults in there. For example, in my pre-K class, I'm considered a least restricted environment, so I have 3 adults in my class, me and my 2 aides, and a small group of kids. So right now, I only have 10 children. Least restricted environment ensures that all learners have access to a meaningful education. Each student needs an individualized consideration for least restricted environment based on his or her unique strengths and needs. Least restricted environment is not a place but a range of services and supports that should be provided in general education setting as often as possible. Next, I'm going to go dive deeper into the IEP process. What is an IEP? An IEP is a document that is designed to meet your child's unique education needs. It is not a contract, but it does guarantee the necessary support and services that are agreed upon and written for your child. So, this is a legal binding document. So, everything that is written in this IEP, everyone that interacts with this student, whether you're an OT, speech, the teacher, the resource teacher, you have to uh, go follow the student's IEP. There are 3 different steps in determining if the student needs an IEP. The first step is a referral process. This is if a parent, teacher, or school staff member has concerns that a child may need a learning disability, may have a learning disability, they can request a referral. So if they feel like the student has a learning disability and they need a little extra help, they can put in a request to get this student evaluated, which leads me to the second process, the evaluation process. The screening of a student is to be done by a specialist in the school. The school or the school program is responsible for evaluating and any test needed while the student is in the IEP process. So for our school, the people that are responsible for doing the evaluation is Child Find. They'll evaluate the student and then they'll send all that data and information over to Clay County and then we'll put it all in an IEP. Eligibility determination. When a student assessments are complete, a written report of the results of each assessment is prepared under the IDEA law. It is mandated that the special education services are guaranteed if a student qualifies for services and their parents agrees. So basically, as long as the student qualifies, they are able to receive these services, and the parent has to agree. We cannot do anything behind the parent's back. We have to have a permission from the parent. Next, I'm going to go over the components of the IEP. An individual IEP typically includes components like the child's present level or academic achievement and function. So basically, this goes over the student's strengths, what they're able to do. This goes over their needs, what they're struggling in, and this goes over their current performance. So basically, how are they currently performing against their age peers? For example, I'm in pre-K. So how are they currently performing against the 3 and 4 year olds, their age peers in our class? Next is the annual goals. So these are goals that are created based on the student's needs and what they're struggling in. So these goals can cover adaptive. Well, again, I'm in pre-K, so these are the goals I know. They can cover adaptive, cognitive, motor, communication, and that's it. And while you're once you put these goals in place, you're supposed to make sure that you're progress monitoring. So you're supposed to make sure that you're keeping track of if the student is meeting these goals or if the student is struggling with these goals. Because if their student is struggling with these goals, you can go back and actually change the goal or tweak it to where it can cater to that student's needs. For instance, you can go back and say what prompting or what visuals um, the student will be able to write their name 3 out of 4 times. You can add those little extra things that will help them meet that goal. Next is special education related services. So this is basically the extra services that they will be receiving outside the academic special design instruction. So basically, this is their OT, occupational therapy, their speech and language, their PT, their physical therapy, and if they need an FBA, a functional behavior assessment slash plan. Those are the related services that would be added to their plan. The next component is accommodation and modification. So this is basically that is also an extra help. So basically, if the student needs to be in a certain place, in a certain place, like a certain seat, there on that IEP, you would add it that they need to be in a certain seat. For example, one of my students have to have a certain toy in her hand to transition. So on her IEP for accommodation, it will be written provided by a parent or teacher. The student will be able to have a little toy in her hand while transitioning from the bus to the classroom or from small group to whole group. Those little things are accommodations for students. Another thing that's on their IEP is their assessments. So basically, the evaluation that the students did at the beginning of the IEP process will be on here. So those are all their test results that are being shown in that section. So after after breaking down the components, next you have your annual review. So I would say basically mid-year you would come together and have a meeting. You would talk about how you think things are going for that student, if they're progressing, or if you think they need a little extra help. You, the teacher, and school specialist, you as a parent, and the student, if appropriate, will access the progress towards the IEP goal, discuss any necessary adjustments, and update the plan for the up and coming school year. This process ensures that the students' education needs are being met and allowed for any necessary changes to be made to support their academic success. So basically, whatever you change at this annual review process is going to follow them up into the next school year. Related services. The annual review process. I literally just talked about that. Related services is basically, like I said, the OT and the PT. It's the OT and the PT and the speech. Those are all your related services for your student. Quarterly monitoring. So every 3 months, you're supposed to keep track of your student's progress. You're supposed to keep track of if you think they're meeting their goals. You're supposed to keep track of any behavior issues, so you can put in the FBA. Or if you have an FBA for them, you're supposed to keep track of how that plan is working for them in their behavior. Always make sure you collect this data, so when you have your annual review, this data is right there for you to show the parents. It's right there to support anything that as a teacher has to say in that IEP. Prior written notice. A prior written notice outlines the requirement for schools to provide a written notification to parents whenever the school proposes or refuses to indicate a change to the IEP. So basically, I, as a teacher, cannot change anything on the IEP. I have to go through the proper channels. So if I feel like, as for example, if I feel like one of my students need an FBA, I would let this ESE specialist know, and then she'll send out a written prior notice to a parent and be like, "Hey, so Miss Clinton thinks that your student needs an FBA. So are you able to meet on such and such a day so we can talk about this and put it in play? Get your permission to collect data to help create a plan for this student. Without Unless a prior written notice goes out, nothing should be done, because that means the parent is not aware of any changes that may be made to the student's IEP. All right, so the last thing I am going to talk about, which this is very important, is the procedural safeguards. Procedural safeguards is an individual education program to ensure that the rights of the students with disability and their parents are protected through the process of the development, implementing, and reviewing the IEP. These safeguards include the right to inform and participate in all decisions related to the child's education, the rights to access educational records, and the rights to resolve disputes through mediation and due process, and the right to appeal process made regarding to the child's education. So basically, this goes over the let the parents know what right they have when it comes to their student's IEP. And parents have a whole lot of rights. So it is always recommended that parents read the procedural safeguards so that when they go into the IEP process, they know their rights and they're able to make sure that their rights are being met and their things are not being done without them knowing. All right, guys, that is the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening in on the IEP process. I hope you're able to gain a lot of knowledge on all the different components and the related services that goes into an IEP. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.